Well, hello again. Right now I have the hubs in the old vise and I'm cleaning them up. The only thing you really need to, after you take a wire brush and brush off any dirt and mud, the obvious heavy stuff, and you get down to the metal, all you need after that is just a round wire brush and an electric drill. That's all. Just kind of anchor it tight. You don't have to, put a gorilla grip with the vise onto this thing. And then I just went around it with the round wheel and the drill, cleaned it all up. The edge right here on both, this one's already been done. However, along the edge here, there's a little bit of rust that's a little bit heavier, and it's hard to keep the wire brush on there, even if I'm going up and down like that. So I'll take that and run it across my wire brush on the bench grinder here. Just give it a quick lick all the way around. Then I will spray both of them with this Permatex rust treatment, and that'll take care of whatever's left. And I've got down in here pretty clean as well with a wire brush by hand on both sides. That's all it really takes, make it look good, get it ready for the new Rotors. Well, that's about as clean as I'm going to get them. There's no crud on them, no anything. Now I'm going to spray them to get rid of the rust. I'm getting ready to put the passenger side shock back in, so I needed this bracket painted and ready to go, and it now is, as you can see, it looks pretty darn good. Even the welds look halfway presentable. Let me zoom in here a little bit. They don't look too bad. Yeah, but I once had a house painter, a friend of mine, he told me that paint hides a lot of sins. A couple of our subscribers have asked me, about 3 of you I guess, have asked me how the budget's going. Well, we're of course over budget because, it took that much to make this car safe. I'm not really concerned about the cosmetics and all that, the parts that I'm taking down and derusting and painting. I guess you could call that cosmetics, but that's really not cosmetics to me. That's just inspecting and making sure everything is good to go before I put it back together and not have a big mess on my hands when I do. And it looks good, just pretty it up, basically. But those of you who restore any car or refurbish any car, I don't care if it's Thunderbird, Chevy, whatever, Mercury, makes no difference. You are going to have certain expenses above and beyond what you anticipated. Now, I budgeted $2,500, but that was before I really got into the safety aspect of this thing. The front wheels and the rear end and the leaf springs and all that stuff. When you first start out, you set your budget and hope you can stay under it. With a $2,500 budget, I'm probably up probably close to $4,000. So we're over by almost $1,500. So let me go down some of the list, or I'll go down the entire list of the most expensive items. Now, we went ahead and replaced the gas tank and the sending unit. And that's pretty expensive there. The wheel cylinders, not too bad. The wheel cylinders on both sides over here. Shocks all the way around, 4 tires, 2 calipers, which were very expensive. The 2 calipers were about $300 total. The tires weren't cheap either. They were, I don't know, about $175 or something like that. Ball joints, upper and lower, they were very expensive for being what they were. Compared to the rest of the stuff, they weren't that expensive. But I was surprised to find out that ball joints were so expensive. That really surprised me. I was used to paying. Of course, I keep thinking of the way it was years ago. I could buy a set of ball joints for a car for $25, but not anymore. Tie rod ends, inner and outer tie rods ends right there. They were not cheap either. The bearings and races. Now, I just got the bearings and races. I told you about them in the last video. I put them in the box over there already. But they were the bearings and races were only $52, but still that's pretty high. And then you throw in the lug nuts; they were another $10 to go with it. So that purchase was $62 in itself. The booster rebuild, that was $200 and let me see, it was $175. That was $225. That's very important. I wanted that thing rebuilt by professionals. Master cylinder, carburetor rebuild kit. Now the carburetor. And the reason I paid as much for the carburetor, a used carburetor from one of our subscribers, as I did the rebuild kit. $50 a pop, a rebuild kit for a carburetor, $50. That's ridiculous. And then of course our shocks all the way around, our shocks in the front here, already mentioned them. The proportioning valve, which will be hooking up here as soon as I can get everything taken care of and back under here the way it's supposed to, get the rotors on, get the calipers up, and I got to run the brake lines and all that stuff, flare the ends. And the last order I just put in the other day, which will be here before this video ends, the rotors. I bought brand new rotors, and they were 65 bucks a piece. Now the $65 a piece gives me big time peace of mind. Big time peace of mind. Okay, I want good calipers, good rotors, good brake shoes, and a good booster and a good master cylinder. That is so important to me. When this, you know, I had an old German tell me one time when I was in Germany. He said, you know, we Germans expect two things from our car. He said, there's only two things we want out of our car. And, you know, I couldn't have agreed with it more, you know. He said we want it to go fast and we want it to stop now. He said, I'll tell you what, that's the way they built those cars. You go like crazy down that Autobahn in Germany, when you hit the brake, that car stops now. That's the way it was. And he was right. So that's what I want. Now this is a car that weighs over 2 tons. It weighs 4,000, I think it's 4,435 pounds. 4,485 pounds, over 2 tons. You know, you can't skip on braking efficiency. It just can't be done. You know, when you hit the brake on this sucker, you've got to stop that much weight, maybe going 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. I will never drive this car 60 or 70 miles an hour. It will never happen. This is not a car to get out on the interstate with. I'm just not going to do it. Unless I have to, which I can't even imagine something like that. I'll just kind of putter around on the back roads and in town and stuff like that. I want to enjoy the car. I don't want to get out there and have to fight other traffic with it, okay? So that's where we stand on our budget right now. Yeah, we're over. However, I think we're down to the last big expense with the rotors to getting this thing put back together completely, hook up the brake lines, throw some gas in the tank, and get this baby out of here. After that, cosmetics. Nothing but cosmetics. You know, the interior is going to be ripped out. I've got the welder to weld in the floor, and I'll have to buy some sheet metal for that. I'm not buying floor panels. They're $100 and some a piece for a little piece of metal that's got those bead roll things in it. Forget that. We're going to go with 16 gauge and let her rip. You know, I'll put a little thicker than what comes on the car. We'll cut it to the shape. We'll do all that. Get it welded in. And then, you know, the headliner will have to be replaced, and I may need some seat belt or seat covers. I'm going to need some seat belts, things like that. But the seat belt's essential by law. But the you know, new seat covers, again, that's cosmetics as far as I'm concerned. You know, so anyway, right now we've got another problem. Not a problem. There's no such thing as a problem. Okay, there really is not when it comes to doing this stuff. We have an issue. Yes. Well, as you can see, the line going into the radiator right here, they made the bend, and another brilliant move by whoever did it. It's almost flat. It's almost flat. It's just, you know, now this is not water running down the lines and going through your transmission and coming back. No, what this is there's a coil inside this tank. The transmission fluid comes up, goes through the coil, and runs back out into the transmission. It cools the fluid. The water doesn't cool the transmission. The radiator cools the transmission fluid. So, I mean, that is ridiculous. Look at that. So that's going to have to be changed. So how am I going to do that? Well, I'm not going to do that. I'll tell you how I'm going to handle it. Once I get this car running and I get it downtown, get a front end alignment, I'm going to take it over to the Delta transmission shop that we have here in town. I'm going to have them put it up on their lift where they can get to the entire thing. And first I'm going to entertain them with what they see. And after they get done laughing, then I'll say, look, I want you to fix that. So it's righteous. Now the line that comes in on the top of that sway bar, it needs protection for now. So what I'm going to do is I've taken a 3/8 inch line here and I've split it. Okay, see how she's split? What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this around that transmission cooling line where it's sitting on top of that sway bar. And then I'm going to take a couple of spot ties, you know, a couple of those plastic ties, wire ties, whatever you want to call them, zip ties. I can't remember what they're called. Don't care what they're called. We're going to put them around. We're going to put it in there. We're going to put 2 or 3 of them on here and cinch it down tight, and that'll keep it from, it's already rubbing a very slight spot in the metal line where it's touching that sway bar. I'll show you that when we get underneath. But this is going to go around, and we're going to put those ties on, and we're going to tighten it up, and that'll take care of us temporarily. Alright, now she looks a whole lot better. I've got a rubber hose on each of those lines, you know, the input and the output, and where they're resting against this sway bar. So, they're not going to go anywhere. Now, like I said, it's only temporary anyway. As soon as I get it downtown, all these lines are going to be removed, and they're going to be done right. Jacob wrote us only a short note. He says, "My name is Jacob, and this is my father's Thunderbird. We bought it from a dealership about a year or 2 ago. The car had been imported from Dubai, where it's been standing deserted for a long time. It had a sticker on it saying that the vehicle will be towed if not moved. Once again, we're laying on our primer paint first. Not very thick. I don't want it on there very thick this time. And then after I paint it black, the other one's already painted. I got it sitting out in the sun for a final dry. It's already dried, but I want it to harden up a little bit. I'm not going to put the primer paint on really thick because the black paint has primer in it also. I've told you that before in earlier videos. But it sure does look a whole lot better than it did, huh? And that's what you want. Well, at least that's what I want. You know, I don't want. I'm going to go to all this trouble. Let's do it right. You know, there's no rush on my part because, you know, I'm retired and I'm waiting for parts to come in anyway. So, all right, we'll let that dry and then I'll hit it with the black. Let's get down to some a little more serious business. This will apply to the 1966 Thunderbird owners only. I don't know if it applies to the 64 and 65. And it certainly doesn't apply to all the other cars in the world. I've never worked on a 64 and 65. I've never owned one. I've never looked at the shop manual, so I cannot speak for those 2 years. They're probably the same, but you know, I can't say. If you ever remove your brake booster and have it repaired, or you ever remove it and put it back on with a brand new master cylinder, you've got to know this information. Years ago, we would just, you know, anytime our master cylinder would go out, we didn't know any better. We would just buy a new one and stick it on, take the old one off, stick a new one on, bolt it up, and away we'd go. Never realizing that a new master cylinder may require an adjustment of this rod because it may not be at the proper depth in the piston on the master cylinder. So what am I getting at? I'm getting at measuring. We have to make sure that the tip of this push rod goes down into the hole over here and doesn't jam up against the piston. If it jams up against the piston and pushes the rod back, you're going to have fluid bypassing in your master cylinder at all times. You don't want that because it'll push that plunger this way. And you don't want it so far back that you have to push the brake practically to the floor to make contact. Okay? We're talking about the tip of the plunger, of the push rod on the booster. Now, if you go on YouTube and to various other places, you'll find that some guys will use this. It's a digital caliper. I think it's called a digital caliper. What is it called? Digital caliper. And what they'll do is they'll take and they'll measure the depth. They'll put a ruler across here like this, and then they'll push this in until this part right here, this edge right here comes down and hits the ruler. Now you have to measure the thickness of the ruler too. That's important. And they'll come down. We'll just fake the ruler. We'll just say that the ruler is approximately right there, someplace. There it is. 1.4 22. Now this is in inches. Inches. 1966 inches, not millimeters. Okay. So inches. 1.42 or 1.43 inches. And then of course you have to consider the thickness of the ruler. Then you come over here and you lay the ruler up here. And again, you have to measure from the top of the ruler to the tip of the push rod. And as you can already see, we have a big space there. Now what do we do about that? This push rod's obviously too short. We can't make up that kind of difference in this down over here. It's just not enough push rod to work with. So what do? Well, you unscrew this tip right here, or you unscrew it and bring it out. Well, it doesn't matter. It still does. I've taken it all the way out and pushed it all the way in, and I still do not have the proper length of push rod to go up in here and barely touch. You know, we want it to barely touch. Yeah. We don't want it to touch against it. We want it to be back just a tad, just a whisper of a clearance between the two. So when you hit your brake, you have immediate brake power. Well, what do? Well, guess what? Just like I told you, let me shut off my caliper. What you do is you ignore those procedures for a 1966 Thunderbird because they don't apply. What do you mean they don't apply? You got to have it the right length in there. If it's going to be too short, too long, you're going to screw up the master cylinder. You're either going to have too little brake or too much. So here's what you do. In a case like this, is this the wrong rod? No, it's not. Is this the wrong adjustment on the tip of it? No, everything is the way it's supposed to be. Otherwise, the people that rebuilt the booster would have told me about it anyway. They did not. So, now, by the way, this thing right here, just to let you all know, this thing comes out of that rubber boot, and this is what it looks like. It just sits down in there in a hole, okay? So we'll stick that back in without trying to destroy the rubber boot that's on the inside. Come on, baby, there we go. Now we'll stick that back down in the hole, like so. Here's what we do. We go to the book. We go to the shop manual. Let me get it out. If we go to page 2-4 in the shop manual, and we look down here, we see that there is a figure 2 is the push rod adjustment. Tells you how to do it. Now the push rod adjustment, it shows you the push rod right here. Now this part right here is the body, this kind of squiggly line right here. Let me zoom in just a little bit. And this squiggly line right here, that's the body of the booster. And it says adjustment screw, which is right that thing on the top, like I told you. And this thing called a push rod gauge. What is a push rod gauge? Well, this is this thing right here. And when you lay that thing on the booster with the rod and the adjustment screw in the center, you should have between 0.990 and 0.995 inches. Okay? So you measure in, this is the width, you make it out of cardboard. You have to make it yourself. Cool, huh? So that's exactly what I did. So here it is right here. I made it right here. Yes, I did. I measured it using my caliper, cut it out. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but it is accurate. And now let's set it over the top of this to see what we get. Well, as you can see, it's still no good because it's supposed to come down to here. Now what is going on here? This is crazy. You know, you go through all this and then say, well, even if I adjust that little bit of space, if I adjust that adjustment screw all the way in, it's still not going to be good. It's way too high, way too high. What is going on here? Now you're about ready to pull your hair out. Well, I sent Brendan last night an email and I said, hey, look, I showed him exactly what I just showed you. And I said, what's going on here? Am I missing something, basically? And he said, well, you know, we talked about it and bantered, and finally I realized, he said something that triggered my memory. Now, let me show you what that was. For those of you who have been following my videos, you remember this little jewel? This is the air filter. It's got a piece of foam rubber in it. I've tacked it in with a little bit of super glue here, 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 and here. Just a little drop, just enough to keep it in place. And this goes on top of it. like so. I'll tell you what, let's just go ahead and put it on here first, and then we'll worry about that later. All right, we go here like this. This will go over the top. Kind of a tight fit, but it goes on. Then this goes over the top. Back up here. This goes over the top like so. That holds that foam rubber in place. Now let's take our gauge and see what we have. Make sure it's pushed all the way down in. Look at that. We have the exact height we need. Okay? Now this is at 0.994. That's the size I cut it out. It said 0.90 to 0.995, and I cut it out at 0.994. A little bit over, a little bit shy, but it's within the tolerance. And there we have it right there. That's how it's done on a 1966 Thunderbird. You make your own gauge, you put this filter thing on there, and then you go ahead and, if you wanted to, you could tighten the bolts all the way down on it, make it sure it's nice and tight against that rubber in the back, and that's how it's done. Now, what does that do for us over here? You know, now that, of course, is not going to be long enough to get to the bottom of that. I've only got that much sticking out. Well, that's tough. That's the way it goes. That's the way the engineers designed it. There will be a slight space there, probably about like that. But as Brendan told me, and of course I had already ascertained, when you press the brake pedal, you won't even notice that right there. But at least it's not pressing against the piston all the time, keeping the fluid from constantly bypassing. Like, you know, we don't want that to happen. And that little bit of space will not make that much difference. I'm thinking, you know, I mentioned to Brendan, I said maybe because this is such a heavy car, maybe they don't want the brakes to go, you know, immediately bang, you know, on. Maybe that slight fraction of an inch will enable, you know, the car to stop smoother and without locking up all the wheels. I'm not sure. But I tell you this, the engineers knew what they were doing when they designed that. So that's how you do it. Go to your book, follow your dimensions in inches, cut it out of a piece of cardboard, make sure that this is on. If need be, you go ahead and adjust this out. Now I'm going to put some Loctite before someone mentions it. Some of you guys are hung up on Loctite. Just before I'm going to go ahead and take this out a little ways. I'm going to put a little bit of Loctite. I'm not going to use the red. I don't want to lock this thing totally tight. I'm going to use the blue, and then I'm going to lock a screw, because this is a self-locking adjustment screw. Self-locking. Says so right in the book. So it's not like it's really loose or anything. So I'll put a little bit of Loctite around it to help it, because it is old. Then I'll screw it on down, and that'll be the end of it. So now that's very important for you guys who own the 1966 Thunderbird. Pay attention. If you have to, watch this segment again. The parts I ordered have not all come in, namely the rotors. The shims that I ordered for the alignment came in this box here. I ordered one of each size. I think it was 64th, 16th, I forget what it is, 64th, 32nd, and 1/8 inch. There's one of each in there. I'll be taking down when the alignment time comes, giving it to the guy, you know, that's going to do the alignment. But the hubs are all nice and painted and cleaned up. They look really nice. No more rust. They turned out great, much better than I expected. Now, on the bottom, I did not paint it with primer enamel. I just went ahead and derusted it with that with the rust reformer, that Permatex, and then I went ahead, once it dried real good, I went ahead and just put a coat of or satin, I guess is what it is, satin clear enamel. That's good enough. That'll keep it from rusting, because it goes on the hub anyway, like this. Anyway, what I've decided to do is, since the rotors are not here, I ordered them from Mac. I don't know what the deal is. This is the first time that's ever happened. Apparently they didn't have them in stock. They should have said something when I ordered them. There should have been something on the website, but there was not. Or they have a different supplier that supplies them. And, you know, of course, you know, normally the stuff I buy is shipped out of Titusville, Florida, and they're having a good coronavirus problem down here right now, a big one. So we need to cut them a little slack in that area, the poor folks. So we'll give them a few more days, but I am going to call and find out what the deal is tomorrow, which is Monday. We're going to go ahead and wrap this video up, since I really don't have any other parts. And I could do a few things, but we'll save them for the next video. And this is that second bracket I made to hold the flexible brake line in the front. It didn't turn out too shabby, I don't think. And right now I'm giving it a good paint coat. Unfortunately, the large hole I drilled in it is a little bit rough, because it turned out our grandson did not have a type of step drill that I thought he had. He had a different one. But it will work. The brake line goes through with no problem, and the clip will catch it on the other side. And we'll get both of these back on the car here before the next video. We'll just get them up so they're out of the way. And we'll come back, and next time we're going to put the races in the hubs. And I'm going to show you how to do that. So until next time, hopefully our parts will be here. This is John. It never fails. I have one more thing I want to cover, and it's very important. It's important to me, and I think it's important to the fella I'm going to be talking about. There is a channel out there called Vintage Thunderbird Repair. Vintage Thunderbird Repair. I'm going to put the link down in the description part of this video. Apparently this fella has worked on Thunderbirds for quite a while, had his own shop or something, and he's now no longer has the shop, and he's doing YouTube videos on it. He's had a channel since 2017, and he's only got 91 subscribers. This guy has some really good content, you know, for you Thunderbird owners. The steering wheel, air conditioning, how the slide mechanism works on that steering wheel, you know, when you get out of the car. It's just amazing, the stuff that I was glad I found it. That's going to do me a whole lot of good once I get inside the car. Take a look at that, and I think you'll find that you owners out there are really going to be glad you did. Okay. Anyway, 91 subscribers with all the good information he's putting out. No, that sucks. He should have 9,000 subscribers or more. So help him out. Go check out his channel. You'll see. I'm not kidding. That guy's got some good stuff.